I'm Alan Kinzel, your host today. I'm with a good friend of mine, Amanda Singer, co-founder of West Coast Family Mediation Center. Also an attorney. You're also a certified divorce financial analyst.
Yes,
Exactly.
all the above.
All the above. So today I'm excited to have you here because I want to talk about, there's so much going on with divorce, property, separation, how you deal with the property in those situations. And, typically there's always been three things you can do. But in this current environment, there's all kinds of different factors coming into play that people should consider. So let's walk through the different ways or different things people can do with property as you see it as you're doing your mediations.
Yeah, for sure. So when we've got a property, especially a residence, we usually find there's kind of three main ways, like you mentioned, right? So one is one spouse can buy the other out and choose to keep the property.
Correct.
Second option could be that they choose to keep it jointly, and then there's a whole host of things that go there. Or the third option is that they're going to sell.
Well, let's talk about those three options. So, when I see people that want to, like one person wants to buy the other person out, I would say the person that's getting bought out, they should really do a home inspection and actually understand what they're taking on, the value they're taking on. And the other thing that's going on in our economy right now is there's more uncertainty. There's maybe a recession looming, et cetera. You're taking a property on at a certain value, and you're taking a little bit of market risk that you may have otherwise not had, say, last year or 2 years ago.
Yeah, certainly. So if they're going to buy out, we have to figure out what's the fair market value of the property. And that is tough, especially when we're in a high market and you see, your neighbor's house or the house down the street that's sold for something that you think is way higher than you think it's worth.
Right.
But if you were to sell the property, you could potentially get that out of it.
Or a declining market. Either way, the markets are always moving. That's one thing we know. But the only way to truly find out the market value is to put it on the market. But that's not what they want to do. So it's kind of hard.
Yeah. So I find, at least in mediation, we try to agree on a value first. Right. Then we may involve like a realtor like yourself who can look at comps and help them understand the neighborhood and help them decide maybe they want to sell or don't want to sell.
Right.
And then sometimes they end up needing to get an appraisal.
Well, let's talk about the second one. So they own it jointly together.
Yeah.
That always seems to be like the highest risk proposition, because if you're still owning it together and say 6 months later, one partner gets aggravated with another one and then they want to make it difficult for that person, or one person doesn't pay the bills. But I understand you can do some things to kind of mitigate some of the risk there. Yeah,
so if they're going to continue to own it jointly, that's the option, I would say, where there's just a lot of conversations that we need to have, right? Around things like, how long are you agreeing to keep it, right? Are you agreeing that nobody could force a sale before a specific date?
Right.
Who's going to cover expenses? And that might be different, right? Who's going to live in it? They might cover things like the mortgage and utilities and certain things, but what about larger maintenance? What about property taxes? So it's making sure that if you want to do that, you're having a conversation and documenting as much as possible so that you don't end up in a situation where you're arguing about it.
And also, what happens if the price goes up or down? Do they share in that? Does one person absorb all that?
Yeah.
The roof caves in, who absorbs that? I mean, there's all kinds of different factors that go into it, but I'm sure, you've seen so many different cases that you're able to take all that experience and kind of put it together for people to where they mitigate a lot of that. So
yeah, definitely. And it's do you want to take on the risk or the reward of the property increasing in value? And if you do, though, then are you helping with things like maintenance? Are you doing that, or are we establishing a value today?
So that used to be like the least popular option from what I saw. But today it's probably one of the more popular options because you're locked into a 3% interest rate, say, and you don't want to give that up if all possible, because if you're refinancing to buy somebody out, you're going to be refinancing at a 6 or 7% interest rate, and that may put a financial burden. So the first thing that people ought to do, even if they're considering buying out, is talk to your mortgage lender.
Yes.
Because you want to make sure you're qualified as you enter these negotiations on what your options are, because you may think you have three options, but you may only have one or two.
Yes, exactly. That's definitely an issue. And even besides the interest rates, being higher, it's just understanding, can you qualify on your own, right?
Correct.
It might be that neither spouse can qualify on their own for the size of the house that they're in.
Correct.
And so I think certainly with the interest rates increasing, they're less likely to want to sell and go buy two other properties with higher interest rates. But it is just understanding, what can you qualify, what can you do?
That brings us to the third option, and that's to sell the home. So oftentimes when you do get separated or go through a transition like this, your housing sizes change. I mean, you don't need the
Yeah.
big house anymore. You may want to be in a specific area. You may want to be closer to other family members or whatnot. Your situations change. And the one thing about putting on the market is you do find out the true market value.
Yeah.
You do separate it. You wash your hands of it. You don't have any ties together, and you start over in a right-sized place in the place that you want to go to.
Yeah,
Right?
and I do see that often. You know, you're in a home that, speaking with clients today that have 6-bedroom house. Well, you know, yes, the wife would like to stay, but she also knows she doesn't necessarily need that space going forward. And so it's just kind of being able to figure out where else can she go, right? What's available, what's on the market that she can, you know, get into a size house that works for
And
her.
we also find too that people, when they're in a house and they've been there for a long time, and conflict might have been the past 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years of that house, sometimes there's not the best of memories in a house, right?
Yes, I hear that all the time of, you know, I don't want to be in this house anymore where all of the memories are together. We decorated it together. We may have done a lot of work on the property. And so there is a lot of that balancing, and it's determining, you know, what's most important to you, right?
Well, that's some great insight. And I know you see so many different cases that you can bring all this experience to the table. I'm so glad you shared that with us today. Thank you, Amanda. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate having the conversation.
Thank you. Love it. This is Amanda Singer. If you're interested in talking about mediation, which is by far the best way to handle a separation, typically in terms of cost, etc.
Yes, for
and
sure. And
speed and
yes, and it's the best option to think about at least first, right?
Correct.
It's not necessarily going to be for everyone, but if you think that you might be able to mediate, look into that option first.
That's Amanda Singer, West Coast Families Mediation Center.
Yep.
And I'm Alan Kinzel, Compass Real Estate. Thank you. See you next time.